Welcome to your Sunday service from Dream Midwifery, the podcast, a birthing centre for the soul. I'm Jennifer Murphy.
And I'm Sarah Richardson, and we are two Irish women with two ancient lineages, but one shared calling, to midwife you back into the full expression of your life force.
Here the other world is alive, the dreams speak, and the ancient ways of Irish midwifery guide us home to ourselves again.
This is a sacred space, wrapped in crack and depth and magic, and a remembrance of who you are and why you're here.
So take a breath, step over the threshold, and enter the world between worlds, the dream temple,
where we midwife souls one dream at a time.
So fáilte gach duine, welcome everyone to this third entry into the Dream Midwifery podcast, this sacred triplicity that we've been exploring over the last number of weeks. And, because we've loved it so much, myself and Sarah have decided to continue. So, this will not be our last episode. But we find ourselves now, in terms of the journey that we've been on, we explored in our first week Samhain and, that energy of death and decay, into the more liminal in episode 2, into the unknown. And now, having spent time in the unknown and in the tension of the opposites, right? So the unknown of who we no longer are and who we are becoming, those seeming opposites create so much tension, but that tension leads to a metamorphosis and in an emergence then that we're going to be exploring this week. So really it's about, dreaming now into Imbolc in 2026 and asking ourselves, well, what are we dreaming into being? And it's interesting to reflect back and see how this triplicity as well really mirrors sacred rites of passage, from the enclosure to the metamorphosis to the third phase then of emergence. And this is where we find ourselves today. So as always, we are going to open, with intention, treating or honoring this as a sacred space, moving ourselves from the counter, so the everyday environment, into the altar, into the other world. And I love how that word in Irish, altar, even though it doesn't mean this in English, the sound is the same as, alter, to alter your reality, or alter, to, put something, place something on the altar. And so that's what we're doing now in our sacred flame. So if you have a candle, if you are in that space to be able to ignite a sacred flame, please do so. And, if you're on the move or it's not possible for you now, you can always come back to this later and, still listening now, but light a flame later on, just to be in that energy of the Tinanefa, of the sacred fire. And I guess, with Imbolc, we are moving into Bridget's time. So let's honor this as a Sulis Frida, as a Bridget's flame, Bridget's fire. I mean, there's so much to say in that, and maybe we'll get to that later on. So just taking a moment to be present to the flame, present to this Tinanefa, this sacred fire, this Sulis Frida, this flame of Bridget, our goddess of inspiration, poetry, childbirth, smithcraft, all of it. So Shin A. So just fáilte, arriving, presencing, and just as always, to really get the conversation flowing, we have an oracle card today from my emerging deck, Celtic Dream Oracle. And the card today then is this card here, Follow the Road to Tara. So it's the Tara card. And so what do I want to say about this? So yeah, Tara is the ancient royal capital of Ireland. In Old Irish, it is Tever, modern Irish Temer, and it means, place of eminence, hill, exalted place. And we know that the ancestors, all of these sacred sites are in high places, right? When you travel there, you can always get a great view across the land. And Tara was the site where the marriage between the king and the sovereignty goddess happened, the Banish Rigi, where the marriage of the high king, I should say, and the sovereignty goddess, what we might see in alchemical terms as the Hieros Gamos, which Sarah, you may want to share later on a little bit about that in your new tattoo.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the alchemical marriage, the sacred union that represents with the High King and the goddess. It represents the union of people and tribe with the more than human. And in more than human, I mean the goddesses, gods, the deities, nature itself, our more than human kin, our animal and plant allies, the divine, the force of all creation, because they all come together in our tradition. And what's really interesting about Tara as well is that the 5 ancient highways of Ireland all led to Tara, right? So if we look at this metaphorically or symbolically, Tara is the high place of soul. It's the place that we travel to, on this inner journey when we've moved into the becoming. We follow that road to Tara to become what our soul's desire is. And there's a story in Irish mythology around the god Lu, after whom Lunasa, the month of August, is named. But when he arrives at Tara, he is met with the gatekeeper of Tara. So there was a guardian of the royal citadel. And the gatekeeper says to Lu, who are you? And goes on to say, well, what art do you have? Because no one without an art enters Tara, right? So we're seeing that art, creativity, the dawn, the soul's calling is essential to be able to enter that place of soul. And anyway, as the myth goes, Lu says, oh, I'm, a poet seer. And they're like, well, we already have one. And he's like, well, I'm a harpist. And they're like, yeah, we have one already. I'm a warrior. I'm a smith. I'm this, I'm that. And eventually he says, well, I am Samhain Donach, right? Samhain Donach, that word dawn, again, creative destiny, soul's destiny. I am skilled in all of the destinies, the creative arts, is what he says. And then, long story short, he is able to cross that threshold into Tara. And so on this card, you will see, or if you're listening, I'll describe that there's 2 kind of figures here, on each side of the portal, the entry point into Tara. And for me, one of these figures is the Anam Cara, the soul friend, the daemon, the guide for the soul. And then on the other side is the ego, because we often have to negotiate between the ego and, our soul's guide, our inner Anam Cara, to be able to enter and cross that portal, that threshold into Tara. And yeah, I guess the message of this card then in the context of our podcast today is really about when we attune to our becoming, it puts us on one of those highways. It puts us on the road to Tara, on the road to the exalted place where we can, become fully alive, fully who we are destined to be, right? Because, the sacred union is a metaphor as well for the inner union of ourselves with our souls. And so, yeah, I think I'll leave it there. And maybe one more thing to say is like, it's also about devotion, you know, and after we've gone through a metamorphosis and are emerging, what are we devoting ourselves to? You know, like, because the road to Tara is a long road. So what are we devoting ourselves to in this season of emergence, in this season of Imbolc, you know, as Imbolc arrives now in the coming weeks? Q&A.
Wow. I wonder, can you hold that card up? Because I feel there's so much coming through and I'd love to just riff on it. Um, because the first thing that I see is like the shape of the vulva. So almost like those two angels are like the labia. Um, and then it's almost like that kind of sun or whatever that kind of shining orb is actually where the clitoris is. And then there's obviously the entrance to the vagina, which is like the dark kind of space. So it's almost like I can see this threshold of the vulva. And what I can also feel is like these two angels, that it's almost like these two midwives. It's like there's the midwife that is in the other world, that is one of the ancestors. And then there's the midwife that is here as well, like the midwife, the human midwives that we have that help us to transition over, but that we always have the one in the other world as well, that kind of Bangluna, the woman who helps us cross those thresholds. So I really, really see the vulva in that image so strongly. And I know you have another card where I was like, that's a cervix. So there's a lot of there's a lot of that imagery coming through your art as well.
It's the Sheila and a gig one, I think that
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, like, it's so interesting that you say that. And you know, because one, it's just so fascinating in terms of symbology and art and how we make meaning and how we metabolize it, you know, through ourselves. So you see things that I will never be able to see, you know, until you illuminate them for me, and, you know, vice versa. But these cards came from a very deep dream that was so otherworldly, where I felt in actual, it would be called maybe a psychoid experience in Jungian terms, where something archetypal emerged from the other world, and it was this pulsating womb, and the womb engulfed me in my bed, and all I felt was just so much love. It was all these iridescent colors. And really, when I tapped, it was only after tapping into that energy. And I had that dream a couple of years ago. But once I start working with that energy again, then all of these creations started to come through. So I don't even know what I'm going to create. Like, when I'm creating these cards, I have no idea what's coming. You know, I just follow the energy, and I just know aesthetically where, you know, point to point to point, but I couldn't tell you like, oh, I'm going to design a card that has two angelic kind of looking figures, you know, because I like angels are a bit triggery.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
right? And I think that's just a bit of Catholic trauma and whatever. But then I have these like angelic figures.
Yeah.
On, you know, this card, but that's the energy of it, and it's just trusting in the energy. So
But it's interesting. Could hold up that card again. It's interesting because what I keep being drawn to is the clitoris, right? And it's almost like how we get through that threshold is through pleasure. Because like there's like 90,000 nerve endings in the clitoris, and there's no other reason for it. Like in our body, there's like everything has a function, right? But the clitoris has no function other than pleasure. So I think there's something really kind of cool about that's its only function. But it's like that to me that's what's been highlighted. It's like that's the map. And it doesn't mean sexual pleasure. It's just that actually how can we bring a little bit more pleasure, or like stimulate pleasure as we're going through something that might be really challenging or confronting or whatever. How can we kind of like turn ourselves on basically to the pleasure. Because with birth, like there's a lot of people who have had orgasmic births or experiences of like overwhelming ecstasy, and a lot of women who've actually like self-pleasured during that experience, and it was a total primal thing, but they pleasured to ease the pain because it acted as like a pain relief. There's a lot of people who, when they have like endometriosis or PCOS and they have like a lot of like menstrual cramps, they'll self-pleasure not for any other reason but just to act as a pain relief. So it's like that's drawing my attention to it. Like if we're going to take birth, for example, as like we're actually pushing a baby out, and we were to start stimulating ourselves in a pleasurable way to kind of fill yourself with some oxytocin, how can we take that as a metaphor for, are we going through something that's really challenging? Are we going through something that's really painful, confronting? And how can we, I suppose, take our power in a way over our body, and ask our body to like turn on a little bit of pleasure to that sensation. And the other thing I just want to say is, like, when you were talking about, like this spark or this fire, this tin and Aoife, what kept coming to mind was that there's so many parts of us that are frozen. Like, and I feel physically, like sometimes I'll pick up on things that, like maybe people who are going to be listening to this or whatever. So it's like I can feel that this sacred fire, this tin and Aoife that I have on front of me from Bridget, is warming up those frozen parts. And that can be like frozen like somatically or, in many ways, but that there's something softening, and that it doesn't have to be this big dramatic thing, that it can just be a slow softening on front of that fire, sitting by the fire.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And I love what you said around pleasure, and pleasure as pleasure as a guide, essential guide. And as you say, like pleasure's been alive to life, and I'm thinking as well, like how interesting, right? That when Lou goes to the gate and the guardian of Tara says, well, what art do you practice, right? And it's not like in the traditional sense that we might think of art, like, oh, painting or whatever the application, whatever it is. It's art in the sense of the dawn, in terms of the sense of the inner pulse of creativity that's alive within us, right? And if you look at that with birth and like pleasure, it's again about the force of creation that's within us. And that kind of, like what Hildegard of Bingen, who we both love, called Viriditas, the greening power of nature, what Dylan Thomas called the force, I can't remember, it's like the force through which, maybe diffused through which the force, I can't remember. But anyway, that unseen force that drives the flower into life, but also into decay. And so I just think there's something really interesting around that. And like when we look at Bridget as a goddess and a mystical saint as well, coming into Imbolc, into her time, she is described in Cormac's Glossary, which is this 9th century text written by a bishop king, actually. And he describes her, he says that she is worshipped by the Fili, by the poet seers of Ireland, right? So by the Aishdána, the people of the arts. And she's worshipped for 3 things. And the first is, being a goddess of poetry, of inspiration, of imbas, the otherworldly inspiration alive within us, right? Again, taking that pulse, that force of creation and channeling it into some creative form. Then she's also a goddess of leechcraft. Leechcraft being, as you would know well, the traditional word for medicine and healing, including childbirth. And then you've also got, so we've got, again, these creative energies, right, that we're seeing in that card as well. And then the third thing is of smithcraft. And smithcraft, I mean, material, like when we're working with kind of looking at how our ancestors worked with smithcraft, it's incredibly alchemical, you know, because you are taking the ore, you're taking like literally the eggs from the earth, right? Taking the eggs from her ovaries or whatever, and you are working with that ore to transform it into a new form, right? Be it, you know, a tool, a weapon, you know, a piece of jewelry, whatever it is. So, like for our ancestors, that was magic manifest. It was incredibly alchemical. And so, again, about like taking something and using the energy of inspiration, of pleasure to actually birth it into a particular form.
Mm. Yeah. And there's something about it being like not contained, because the thing is with creative energy, like if we have like 100% turned on to creative energy, like that can create an anxiety, because you know that feeling when you're like so like there's so much creative energy and there's so much, and it's just like you feel it in your body as like a physical anxiety. And you're, you know, same with like if you're giving birth, right, and you're getting these surges of contractions or whatever, it's like a very physical creative energy. So it's almost like it needs to be expressed, like it can't be contained, it needs to be moved, it needs to be allowed to be expressed and to move and to sway and to dance and to sing and to create and to, you know, like I feel like this strong energy of like forward motion, or just being, you know, we were in Samhain, so we were going in, and then we were in the liminal, so then we were in, and now it's like it needs to come out, it needs to be born, it needs to be expelled. And I feel like if anybody is a highly sensitive, highly creative person and they are feeling like really anxious, like maybe there's something that is trying to be born from you. And with this container of a body, maybe it's too small for what you have to be birthed, you know? And maybe it just needs to take up a little bit more space, and it just needs to be moved and, you know, swayed. And I just feel this like movement energy.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And do you know what I'm thinking of as well? I'm thinking of, do you remember when you were writing your book and you literally packed up and went to the well of the white cow,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, the well of the dark eye at Tara, right back to Tara again. And yeah, I'm really loving this Tara energy today, actually. So you spent, like, you wrote your book. You allowed that energy to flow through you at Tara. You woke up, didn't you, with a ping, you know, I need to go to Tara. And then you're like, I remember getting messages from you and you're like, you know, like a mad woman, a crazed woman, a Misha yelped at that well, just writing and writing and writing. So yeah, could you maybe share a little bit about that and the
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. Because that was such a creative process. And, you know, I've had so many miraculous, magical, otherworldly experiences that I've had at Tara. Like some confronting, some like just jaw-droppingly incredible. Um, but like I sat at that well. So firstly, I remember I there's so many directions. There's like 5 roads to Tara I could go right now. But I remember sitting at the Sheila gig in Tara, and Sheila was at my back. And I remember I had to breathe so strongly because the energy was so strong. So I was like, ooh, ooh, because what was coming through me was so big. It was that Sheila energy. At the time, it really frightened me because it was really big. And it's interesting because you were just talking about that psychoid experience. Like, I've had similar experiences around the same time with this placenta energy. And every time I would feel this placenta energy, I would get like really overstimulated. Like it was a big energy. It really frightened me a little bit. So this same energy was coming through me at the Sheila. And I was like, oh, and like, if I didn't get that out of my body and onto a page or onto, like, I would lose my fucking mind. Like I'd lose my mind if there was that much trying to be contained. And it's interesting because like I have ADHD, my dad has ADHD, my son has ADHD, like his dad had ADHD, but like, I mean, that's what we put on it now, but we were all just a very highly creative family. But it's this energy of like, there's so much that's moving through me that I need to create. And I think if I don't create, I actually, I just put on loads of weight. It's really funny. If I don't create, my body, it just gets bigger. And then when I'm creating, my body just gets smaller. But yeah, I remember sitting at Tara. I wrote the whole book at Tara and then I edited it at Tara. And I remember Courtney Davis, for anyone, if you don't know, there's this little kind of cottage art gallery, witchy, wizardy little place there at Tara. And he is the artist there, does an amazing work. And he came up to me and he's literally like a little fairy man. And he was like head to toe, multicolored. He had a top hat on at the time. And he came up and it was so insignificant. I don't even think he'd remember me, but it was so significant. And we were just like sitting there and I was just like finishing the edits. And then he just said to me, like, if you keep editing it, it will be a different book. Like, you need to know when to stop editing because the more you edit then, because it's a continuous thing. Like, I desperately want to edit my book now, but it would be a different book. I just need to write another book. But it was just such a powerful piece of wisdom. And he was just like, just, that's it. Like, that's it. And then that was it. And I sent it in and that was like a huge birth experience. And actually, I might just read a page from it, just around this kind of theme of, this is the chapter called gestation. So it's broken down into 4 parts. It's death, conception, gestation, and rebirth. So that's the book if you haven't seen it, Woman. And I'll just show you this image. This is the woman who is just gestating. So she's not quite ready to birth, but she's just gestating. And she's just kind of tending, but she's really big. Like she's got big breasts, big arms, big belly. She's just in that mode of expansion. And so this says, gestation, in the same way when we conceive a baby, we go through 40 weeks of growth and expansion and in-depth development. The time then comes when it is time to birth our baby into the world. The time inside the dark room has finally come to an end and the birthing process of your creations and life has just begun. The expulsion and the contractions birth this baby from darkness into light. And so too do we birth ourselves from the darkness into the light. Little do we know at the time, but the pressure and the constriction of being squeezed through that birth canal is exactly the pressure that we need to then fully embrace all of life. So it's like that pressure, like not only does the mother go through her own birthing experience, but us as this newborn, we're like, that's incredibly painful for your skull to like merge and overlap and all the bones of our skull. Like we're being totally constricted. It's a new experience. We're doing it on our own and we're going through this really tiny canal, birth canal, and being constricted, and our lungs are constricted and our neck is constricted, and there's a few minutes where it's just our head and we're just being constricted, and then our body rotates and our body is born and takes this huge inhale. But it's the constriction that allows for the first inhale of life. So to fully embrace all of life, to fully inhale all of life, we first need to be so compressed so that we can then expand. So there's something in that as well.
Yeah, and thank you for reading that beautiful, really, like that was like an attunement, to be honest, or like it was like receiving an attunement of your beautiful book, and the art is just magnificent. It really is. I mean, it's a treasure. But yeah, like what you're reminding me of as well is just like, obviously birth is a great natural process, and like creativity is a great natural process. Like I'm thinking now around like when you're talking about the contraction and the depth, and I'm thinking around as well around how the seasons work and how in the phases of alchemy they align to the ancestral seasons that we have here, right? So I went down like a rabbit hole, as you know, maybe, well, it really came to the fore last year, but it started actually in Samhain 2023, where I became obsessed with the secret garden. As yeah, do you remember that?
Yeah.
That is like a metaphor for the creative process, right? That the garden itself has its four seasons, the four kind of you know, movements of the year in the Gaelic tradition, right? So Samhain, Imbolc, Bealtaine, and Lunasa are all traditional agricultural seasons here. Um, and, they're also seasons of divinity, points, marker points in the divine year as well. But I was studying alchemy at the time and, doing my spagyrics and all of that. And I realized that the seasons as well just align to the alchemical process, right? And the alchemical process is ultimately as well about creativity. It's about birth, right? The magnum opus, the great work, that you birthed and having gone through this process. So you have like Samhain as your dark night of the soul. It is, the inner work, the as in the time to go dark, essentially. That is the Negredo in alchemy, right? So this kind of blackening phase, this dark night of the soul, this wintering. And then once that has passed and you're able to stay in the tension of that, right? Because it's a great void, then you move into Imbolc. Imbolc is the albedo, right? The whitening in alchemy. And in the alchemical process, there's a lot around water and purification and cleansing in the albedo stage. And I just think, like, how fascinating is that? Because Imbolc is the time of holy wells in this country, right? We've over 3,000 Turbanefa, sacred well, like a sacred well, sacred wells on this land. And then, having had that cleansing, that purification, the refining back of, like, it's almost like whatever you let die in Samhain, when you come into Imbolc, there's a new consciousness emerging, but it's only a little bud and it needs to be cleansed and purified and refined and looked after, so that it can bloom by the time Bealtaine comes, right? So that's like in the creative process, we're going in, we're wintering, then a new consciousness, a new idea, a spark is emerging, but it's too early to share with the world, right? Because we know as well, when we share our creative process with the world too early, it can actually kill it, so we have to be really intentional around that. It's like sharing an early pregnancy, just we have to kind of, use our discernment there. But when we do that, then we're able to come into Bealtaine, right? Into summer, the full bloom, which is the citrinatas, the yellowing in the alchemical process, where we're starting to move out into the world and share, what we've created, what we're birthing. And then it comes full cycle at Lunasa when we're harvesting the reward of that. And that's the rubedo. That's the reddening, the new blood. The blood is literally pulsing, at this time. It's, almost like that orgasmic energy because it's the harvest season as well. And I often think, relating it back to Tara, that like one of the sovereignty goddesses who's most associated with Tara is Maeve Lac Jarrig, Maeve the red-sided. I mean, no one really knows why she's called the red-sided. But I think about like, well, she is a symbol of the Hieros Gammas, of the sacred union, which is the rubedo in alchemy. It's the reddening, it's the lifeblood, that enables life to flourish. So, just really kind of feeling all of those phases and the intelligence of them in what you shared as well. This January, Dream Midwifery invites you into Threshold, a 31-day activation from Samhain to Imbolc, Cailleach to Bridget, from decay to fertility, from death to conception, from the bones of winter into the spark of Imbolc.
Anchored between the Capricorn moon and the Aquarius moon, this is a portal of deep personal alchemy and a resurrection of your full life force. For 31 days, you'll journey through ritual, myth, audio journeys, embodiment practices, art, community, and 3 in-depth live ceremonies as we descend into the darkness and rise into the fires of Bridget.
If you're ready to shed what's old, meet the magic of the unknown, and conceive the new self that you'll birth in 2026, join us inside Threshold.
The Dream Temple doors are now open. Step across into the world between worlds. The link is in the show notes. Yeah, the hero Scamos is so it's just coming up so much recently. I know for me it's almost like it's coming up for me as how to hold the priestess and the physician. Like, how do you hold those two energies? How do you hold those two worlds? So I'm still playing with that. Like, when it comes to your own inner marriage, what are the two parts of you that are coming into union?
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because I had like this, now I don't know where I'm going to go with this, because it was so bizarre. But I had this, I was kind of thinking, maybe like it was over Christmas, I was thinking, what is my thing that it's like the words that you wouldn't like anyone to call you, right? Or the phrase that you wouldn't like anyone to call you, right? And before I even had, I was reading about this, right? And before I even had time to think about what it would be, the words "away with the fairies" came in. And I thought, what? Like, away with the fairies? And I thought, well, that would be funny if that was like my fear word of something that I wouldn't want to be called, right? Because, I have always had such a deep connection, to the fairies, from my entire life, basically. And that was, my grandmother was a great influence there. And there's other kind of maybe more negative reasons for that as well, around the archetypal, maybe playing too much of a role in my childhood and so forth. But I thought, oh, actually, that is true, right? Because my challenge has been like trying to navigate that very kind of maybe more academic, scholarly side, right? With also, like, I would, like, it's like using the word channel. Oh, I can't, what? No. You know what I mean? And actually, I'm kind of working with that in terms of like, embracing more of myself as a creative channel, right? Because what else can I call it? But there's so much like, oh, there's real tension around that, right? Around wanting to maybe, yeah, like the integration of maybe the scholarly, more academic, like what we might call the sus, part of me in Old Irish, and then the more immas, the more inspirational channel or the worldly wisdom, But I think that, like, if I was to enter 2026 and say, right, I'm going to be away with the fairies, I think I'd probably have the most expansive year of my life.
Yeah.
Because it's shadow, right? That is very shadow. Like, it's something that is so unconscious. Like, it shocked me. I was, it just came out of nowhere. And I thought, no way. I'm surrounded by, art of the she. I mean, it's my work, blah, blah, blah. But there's a shadowy element there that's like, and obviously, I'm not saying that there's no discernment, that like I go off into the other world. Like, that's incredibly dangerous. We always have to be grounded and rooted in this world. What I'm trying to say, though, is that, that labeling of somebody who cannot adhere to the obsession with rationalization, with the scene, with the logos of this world, which is so problematic and is literally destroying. It's like sucking the magic out of our world, right? Because magic is natural. Magic comes from driocht. Driocht means to know the oak, right? It's nature, the ultimate force of creation. So anyway, I don't really know where I'm going there, but that's definitely something that's come up for me.
Yeah, that's so amazing, because when you think about, like, if someone says, "Oh, she's away with the fairies," it's like they're discarding you, they're not taking you seriously, and you're not relatable, and like it's undermining, like, because you're having an experience that's like, no, this is a true experience. Like, I'm having a direct experience with the other world, and like it has meaning and everything, but it's like just being discarded. Like, she's away with the fairies. Like, you're not relatable. You're not on this earth. You're not, like, so it's just so like degrading in a way. I'm thinking that for me, my word would be my deep, like, not deep fear, but like, I have this thing that I'm always in trouble. Like, I'm going to get in trouble. Like, yesterday, one got a notification that we got, because we were just in Venice, got a notification that we got a review on Airbnb by the guy who was running the Airbnb. And I instantly was like, a bad one. He was like, no, it was actually a really nice one. But like, that's where my mind goes. Like, I'm always in trouble. And it comes from being a fucking head case in school where I actually genuinely was in trouble. And also just like, just, oh, I'm bad, I'm in trouble or whatever, but I have that's always there. So I think when it comes to that word, I think there's something for me around being unsafe. Like, if someone said that I was unsafe, or like, that there's something that I was doing that was unsafe, or like if they were to say, like, as a midwife, I'm unsafe, or like if they heard me talking about this kind of work and my magic and stuff, that the authorities, I know you have this as well about the authorities would take my midwifery registration or something like that. So for me, it's around, not, it's very similar, but like not being taken seriously, or something being taken from me, but being labeled as unsafe or mad, or, but this is definitely ancestral. Like, my auntie, like, who I wrote about in the book, like, she was put in an institution and she died in an institution. I think she was about 19 when she was put in an institution, and she died there because she stood up in church and started speaking about angels. So like, this is real. This witch wound.
Absolutely real. Was her name Bridget?
Bridget, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Because it's similar with my great grandmother, Catherine O'Reilly. Like,
Which is my mom's name.
Yeah, I know. That she ended up, like, she was sent to an institution because she had melancholia. And that's it. Like, it's just...
And then the hysteria, obviously, that's a whole other episode.
It is, yeah. Maybe we will continue it in that episode, because there is so much here around all of that. So,
but it's really relevant, because when you think about us being the fullest expression of ourselves, like, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about being the fullest creative expression of ourselves, full 100% ourself, authentic, full expression. That's where our deepest fear is going to come up. That's where you're going to think you're away with the fairies, and I'm going to think I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to trigger. Oh, that's another one. I'm going to trigger somebody because if I'm too loud or too big or too beautiful or whatever it is, too big and then yet too small, and then too much and not enough. Like, it's like that all has to go, because we have to be okay with being the fullest expression of ourselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one thing that's it's reminding me of as well is, like, just the this shaming nature in all of this, like you're too much, you're not enough, or, you're away with the fairies, or, like whatever it may be. Like I remember when I was training as a feminine embodiment coach years ago, like this line just always stayed in my head, and that, our teacher Jenna Ward shared, and it was like that shame is the number one silent killer of a woman's power. Like, if you want to take away my power, just shame me.
Yeah. And
Like,
public
ridicule me. Ridicule me, shame me, like I'm away with the fairies, I'm this, I'm that. And, you're going to take like that's, it's so insidious, and it is absolutely a killer of life force. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so I think shame is probably the biggest thing that is in women. And I remember one thing that somebody said to me about shame was like, well, we carry so much shame, but the thing to differentiate is like there's things that are shameful, like there's things that have happened that are shameful, but we don't need to carry the shame. But it's like differentiating between an experience that you've had that may be shameful, it shouldn't have happened or whatever, but that you don't need to carry that shame. A lot of the shame also isn't even our own that we're carrying.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Like, again, it's intergenerational, and we come from a culture that, I mean, if you think about the great colonizers of this culture, we went from British imperialism, where we were shamed for being away with the fairies, for being, like backward, like, I mean, just all of it, right? For our superstitions, for all of this, not recognizing actually the inherent medicine and magic and like depth of philosophy and understanding in our folklore and our mythology, to then into the Catholic Church, right? The next great colonizer in collusion with the Irish Free State. And, look what happened there. I mean, my own brother was born in a mother and baby home. Like, I mean, we can't even, that's like, I mean, 10 podcast episodes.
Yeah, I'm like, I have so many podcast episodes. And if any of you who are listening have something that you want us to talk more about, just write it in the comments, because we want ideas as well. There's so much that I could say. So much.
So, well, maybe we'll come back, right, to this, to this energy of becoming and of Imbolc, and maybe like, do you want to say a few words? I know we've journal prompts to share, but maybe we both say a few words around threshold, around activation, that is beginning on the new moon, January. It's like we both like we created this idea for threshold, which is really about moving over a 31-day activation with myself and Sarah. So like every day you'll be receiving a tool, like be a creative tool, a guided journey, an art practice, journaling prompts, a ritual, a ceremony. We'll also have 3 live ceremonies throughout our time together. And this is about moving from Samhain, from working with the archetypal energy of the kayak, into Imbolc and into the archetypal energy of Bridget, right? So crossing that threshold, and we'll be literally doing that together. We'll be moving from the middle of January into the middle of February. But what we've discovered is that it actually aligns perfectly with, the shedding of the snake from this year into the next Chinese New Year, and the February new moon, right, into that new lunar cycle, which is about the fire horse, about the energy of the horse, which is where we started this podcast with. So, I mean, we're definitely tapping into the collective field there. But yeah, this is going to be a really potent container over those 31 days to support you in all of this in your becoming into 2026. So, Sarah, do you want to add anything
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, there's two things I just want to add just about that horse energy and the momentum forward that we've been talking about at this in this podcast, but also that, so often we go through like these rites of passage alone and maybe unwitnessed and unrecognized. And I feel like with Threshold, it's an opportunity to have a rite of passage witnessed. And I think that's a really important thing in community that we're missing, that our ancestors did really well. That, we probably only really witness maybe marriages and funerals. And I know you've said, Jen, that there's something really powerful about on your wedding day to have your love witnessed. I remember you saying that to me. And I'm really excited to have that in 10 weeks too. But that when I think of Threshold, it's like to do it as a community and to walk across a threshold. When we do that in a ceremony or in a group or in a community, something really magical happens. And it's like, it's recognized by all of us, but by the other world, by the ancestors. And it's like, you do really draw a line in the sand. Like I have people come to me that said, like, when I came to your Samhain ceremony in 2022, that's when everything changed. Or when I went to the lunacy. So it's like, that's because it was ritualized, it was in ceremony, it was really witnessed, and that's transformational. So I feel like that's really the beauty of Threshold.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it really honors both, the way like consciousness works, right? In terms of having like the personal, and our own journey, our own individual journey of individuation, of becoming who we are born to be, but also that we do that as part of the collective as well, of, the collective field, and do so in that witnessing energy is just so beautiful. And when we do that as well, I think, like, as you said, it's where the magic happens, because an intelligence starts to come into form that we can't even anticipate as facilitators. How many times has like just like even the simple example of that synchronicity around the snake and the horse,
Yeah.
which we hadn't even thought about when we were, like dreaming this into form. So yeah.
Yeah. Or even like the intelligence of the same themes coming up, of like people will come into a ceremony and they'll be like, I'm here because of this, this, this. And then everybody in the room was like, same. It's like there's a cauldron that is bubbling, filled with intelligence. It magnetizes you in. So if you are feeling like something being activated, just trust that process. Before I go into these journaling prompts, I just want to ask you, Jen, what brings you alive?
So what brings me alive is like, no, it is actually my word for the year. I don't even know how I'm going to explain it, but it's not even a word. It's actually two words. So just like romancing life, right? Like when I feel like I'm in relationship with life, right? And, in romancing life, that's what I mean. Being in relationship, being alive. Like I was walking this morning at like, 5:30 in the morning, and I saw like, I was in relationship with this beautiful blackbird. Then I was looking at the footpath, and because of the frost, it was glistening, and it felt like every step that I took, something was glistening back. Then I went to the sea with a little tincture bottle, and took some seawater, which is up in my grail cup on my altar there. And it was just like, that's what makes me feel alive. Like just that romance, like I'm in relationship with life, and I mean that in the sense of my, you know, my soulmate partner, Fergus, and like obviously my boys and my Anna Carja, like your good self and my soul friends, but really just with life itself as well. So I don't know if I'm explaining that, but romancing life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it also takes effort, because it took effort for you to give yourself that time to do that this morning. It would be very easy to say, I'm just going to sleep in or turn off the alarm. But you had to carve out time to do that in your busy household.
Yeah, no, and I did, and particularly like I have two small children, so it's full on. So yeah, but then like there's something again about like what gets me up out of bed is actually devotion to myself and to
Mm-hmm.
my soul. I'm like, I'm devoted to you, like we've so many, like throughout our lives, we go through so many kind of phases of abandoning ourselves, I mean, I have dreams of like, you know, I'm working with my analysts at the moment around a dream that I had of lots of like a whole treasure chest of disembodied limbs, right? So it's all my disassociations, which I have in this beautiful treasure chest. What I'm doing, like,
Yeah.
I do. Like, so there's so many times that you abandon yourself or you have to, right, through disassociation to survive. And so for me to actually say to myself, I'm devoted to you. I'll do this for you. It's a really powerful act for me personally.
It's like choosing you. A few episodes ago, putting yourself on the cards. It's like, I choose you. Yeah.
Mm.
Um,
And what about you?
what brings me alive? Oh my God. I feel like whenever I think about this, I think of like, I had the most sexiest pear yesterday, right? Like the fruit, right?
I can't appear.
What is he talking about?
Fair enough.
No, a pear, right? And I took a bite of this pear and it was dribbling down my face, right? And it was juicy and sweet. And I was like, yeah, like that's what life's about. Or like a goat's cheese salad that's like oozing with goat cheese and then like crunchy walnuts and maybe beetroot and like fucking like the sweetness and the juiciness of life. Like, so there's like food, like really beautiful food, but like nourishing food and like big bowls of it and dripping down my face, juiciness, right? But also like the process of like planning this wedding is so fun because it's so creative. And like, I'm not one bit stressed. I'm just like loving the whole creative process of it and like talking to the celebrant and like, because it is a rite of passage. And I feel like that's also my work. And I'm like, just really enjoying the process of like putting this together and all the loved ones coming and the little parts of it. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do after it. I'm going to have to just like be a celebrant or something.
Another book.
Yeah. But I don't even know. I maybe it's just like the juiciness, like that word is always with me. But like
Yeah.
a dirty pear drift.
Dirty pear. Yeah. And I mean, if like someone said to me, do you know someone who's juicy? I'd be like, yeah, I do. You and your face would just, conjure itself up.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's actually interesting. So so you're away with the fairies, it's for me, it's the word fat. When actually fat is actually my authentic color. I don't mean fat as in body, but like fat, juicy, fat, like all of life. But that is my serious shadow.
And that is the word for Eru.
Yes,
Eru,
fat lamb. Yeah.
the name of Ireland, named after the goddess Eru. We're one of the only few countries to be named after a goddess. And it means, yeah, like abundance, richness, soil, fat land. Like it's like juicy, juicy and green, like your pear.
Yeah. I didn't know what you were going to say. Like, okay, integration. So for all the people listening, first of all, and if you want to just write these down or you can come back to these after, what are you dreaming up for 2026? Like, what is the big dream? Like, we're not talking about like the little dream. We're talking about going big, juicy, away with the fairies, as big as you can go. What are you dreaming for 2026? What version of you is emerging? And I feel like for this question, it's like just one foot. Like I'm just emerging one foot. I'm not fully out, but I'm just emerging. like what we've been talking about, what brings you aliveness and erotic charge and just that full life force? What brings that for you? Like if you could name 2 or 3 things, and can you give yourself that every single day? And what dream are you ready to commit to? Amazing. So let's see, do we have time for like 2 minutes of a little clearing?
Yes.
So, okay, cool. So we're just going to do a little bit of an energy clearing and just see what comes through. So just closing down the eyes and just feeling into the body. And the first thing that I can feel is like this kind of wriggly, squirmy energy. And it's like there's just so much. It's like a Coke bottle has been shook and it needs to be released. So there's a lot of energy in the solar plexus. That is where the kind of life force and that fire is burning, and it's actually creating a bit of an anxiety in the physical body. So I'm just going up to the crown, because the crown is almost where it's like there's a cap that's being placed on top of the head. And this is like an ancestral cap. Like the crown is our connection to our life force, our source, spirit, the other world. And it's like there's been a cap that's been placed there of a limit of how much you're allowed to have. But actually it's outdated. So we're just going to remove that, because it's outdated. We needed it and it protected us for a period of time, but we don't need it anymore. Thank you. That's cleared. And then that kind of allows for that flow of energy to flow a little bit better. And that'll ease that kind of overstimulated energy. Yeah, because the source of the energy is coming from the solar plexus. This is our power center. This is our drive forward. This is our Agni, the fire, the Tina Nepha. It's our hunger. It's our appetite. It's our I am. It's our confidence. We know who we are. This is where the energy is. And it was just a little bit stagnant. And it's beginning to move. And it's beginning to move in an upward motion. So just allowing that, take a big deep breath in. And exhale. Beautiful. And giving yourself permission for you to be big, for you to be away with the fairies, for you to be seen as whatever that shadow word is. To just explore that. What's the worst that could happen if someone called you that? And maybe explore that a little bit. And just taking a breath in and out and blinking the eyes open. Beautiful.
Oh, Weekus O'Cree, Sarah, for bringing us to Tír na Nog there and collapsing a few timelines in 2 minutes. So yeah, thank you for that really powerful activation. And so yeah, it's time now just to close down. And so an invitation, as you blow out your candle, if you have a candle in front of you, is before you do it, right, remembering that this is a Solis Regia, this is a Bridget's flame, right, a Bridget's light, that you just allow for one takeaway from this podcast today that you are going to carry forward. Just one thing. And in blowing out this flame, you are setting an intention to make a little devotion to following through in whatever that one thing is. Okay? And that Bridget will guide you on your path with this. Agus mar sin atá sé. And so it is. Slán for now, everyone. We will be back.
Yeah, we will.
Bye. Slán. Join us for Threshold, a 31-day activation from the Kyliac to Bridget, from death to conception, from bones to spark.
with rituals, journeys, embodiment, creativity, and 3 live ceremonies. Step into the resurrection. The link is in the show notes.
You've been listening to Dream Midwifery, a birthing centre for the soul.
With new episodes every Sunday from your loving hosts, Sarah
and Jen.